The complex relationship between the United States and China stands at a critical juncture, shaped by years of economic interdependence, growing political tensions, and fundamental disagreements about the future of global leadership. The trade war initiated during the Trump administration marked a watershed moment, reflecting a deeper shift in how Washington views its relationship with Beijing. This shift wasn't merely a political decision but represented a broader consensus that China's economic practices had disadvantaged American interests over several decades. The current state of U.S.-China relations reflects a dramatic transformation from the engagement policies of previous decades. Where once there was optimism about China's integration into the global economic system leading to political liberalization, today there's widespread skepticism across the American political spectrum. This shift in perspective has been particularly pronounced in Washington, where a bipartisan consensus has emerged viewing China primarily as a strategic competitor and potential adversary. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted our understanding of contemporary China, creating what Tom Friedman describes as a dangerous knowledge gap. With reduced business presence and fewer direct interactions, American policymakers and business leaders have limited first-hand exposure to China's current reality. This isolation is further exacerbated by a sharp decline in educational exchanges, with fewer American students choosing to study in China, and a general reluctance to engage in collaborative projects. The transformation of China's governmental structure under Xi Jinping represents a significant departure from previous trajectories. The system has become increasingly centralized and authoritarian, moving away from the collective leadership model that characterized previous administrations. This shift has disappointed many observers who had hoped China would continue on a path toward greater openness and reform. The concentration of power under Xi's leadership has implications not just for China's domestic governance but for its approach to international relations and economic partnerships. The American business community's evolving perspective on China tells a compelling story of disillusionment. Once strong advocates for engagement and trade with China, many American businesses have grown increasingly frustrated with what they perceive as unfair practices, forced technology transfers, and intellectual property theft. This shift in sentiment from the business sector has contributed significantly to the broader hardening of American attitudes toward China. A persistent debate centers on China's capacity for innovation. Some observers argue that China cannot innovate independently, relying instead on borrowed or stolen technology. However, this view is increasingly challenged by evidence of rapid advancement in Chinese technology and manufacturing capabilities. From artificial intelligence to renewable energy, China has demonstrated significant progress in key sectors, suggesting a more complex reality than simple technological dependence. The competition in emerging technologies has become a central battleground in U.S.-China relations. Electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and renewable energy technologies represent critical areas where both nations seek leadership. The United States faces the challenge of maintaining its technological edge while competing with China's massive investments and coordinated industrial policies. This competition has implications not just for economic prosperity but for national security and global influence. The risk of escalating hostility between the United States and China extends beyond bilateral relations. A deteriorating relationship between the world's two largest economies could lead to a bifurcated global order, with separate technological standards, economic systems, and spheres of influence. This division would complicate efforts to address global challenges like climate change, pandemic response, and the governance of emerging technologies. The current political environment in the United States presents particular challenges for developing a nuanced China policy. Both major political parties have adopted increasingly hawkish positions, leaving little room for discussion of engagement or cooperation. While concerns about Chinese practices are legitimate, this unified stance risks oversimplifying complex issues and potentially leading to counterproductive policies. A more sophisticated approach to U.S.-China relations would include several key elements. First, it would recognize the need for targeted responses to specific challenges rather than broad-based confrontation. This might include graduated tariffs tied to particular behaviors, strategic investment in key industries and technologies, and maintained channels for diplomatic dialogue. Second, it would acknowledge areas where cooperation is essential, such as climate change and global health security. Third, it would focus on strengthening American competitiveness through domestic investment and alliance building rather than solely trying to contain China. The importance of maintaining strong international alliances cannot be overstated in this context. The United States' network of global partnerships represents a significant advantage in its competition with China. Effective engagement with allies can help coordinate responses to Chinese practices, maintain technological advantages, and preserve the rules-based international order. The path forward requires careful consideration of how to foster a relationship that addresses mutual challenges while managing inevitable competition. This doesn't mean abandoning legitimate concerns about Chinese practices or compromising on important principles. Rather, it suggests developing a sophisticated strategy that recognizes both the competitive and cooperative aspects of the relationship. Success in managing U.S.-China relations will require several key elements: a better understanding of China's current capabilities and limitations, recognition of areas where cooperation is essential, strategic investment in American competitiveness, maintenance of strong international alliances, balanced approach to trade and technology policies, and a clear-eyed assessment of security challenges. The stakes in this relationship are too high for simplistic approaches or reactive policies. The goal should be to create conditions for both nations to prosper while managing inevitable tensions and competing interests. This requires moving beyond the current paradigm of pure confrontation toward a more nuanced and strategic approach that serves both countries' long-term interests while addressing legitimate concerns about fair competition and security. The future of U.S.-China relations will likely define much of the 21st century's global order. Finding the right balance between competition and cooperation, between protecting national interests and maintaining global stability, represents one of the most significant challenges facing American policymakers. The solution lies not in choosing between engagement and competition but in developing sophisticated strategies that can accommodate both while advancing American interests and values.